What's up, guys? Welcome back to a new video here. So recently, the political streamer Destiny had an appearance on some show. I don't even know the name of it, but it was pretty interesting where he made a number of really good points, basically calling out Trump and the administration over their insane policy of deporting people, criticizing the state of Israel. That's basically, he went into it, basically saying it's actually not really about protecting Jewish students, which of course is what the Trump administration is claiming, but it's more of a form of political bullying what they're doing. And they're basically deporting people who don't agree with the administration. And if you don't agree with what we want you to teach, we're going to basically revoke your funding and deport anyone who disagrees with the current administration. That's basically the point Destiny is trying to get across here in this segment. And we'll show you the clips of this. And the thing that's super interesting about this is, guys, the Trump administration basically is revoking funding from a number of all these universities, saying if we don't have an advisor basically supervising what can be taught, we're going to revoke all of your funding, which goes into research and grants, basically going into cancer funding, for example, and a number of important scientific research avenues. So that's the other thing about this that's not really talked about as much. A lot of this funding going to these universities that a lot of people think is, oh, it's so great. Why are we giving our private money or tax money to all these universities? Well, first of all, the only reason why he's revoking it is because he wants to basically have taught there what he wants to be taught there, which is what they do in dictatorships, by the way, guys. Secondly, a lot of this funding goes to actual research. So we could be preventing massive breakthroughs in the medical field and other scientific avenues because of Trump's political bullying here, which we've seen with law firms and we've seen with a number of his other political opponents where he's gone after them if they don't basically capitulate to him. And Harvard was the first university that basically stood up to him saying, okay, screw you, we're not going to take your funding and we're just going to keep teaching what we want to teach, which is kind of the purpose of America, to have academic freedom and freedom of speech, which of course the Trump administration does not believe in at all. Again, the idea that they believe in free speech is ridiculous, which is why, if they actually believe that, they wouldn't be deporting people who disagreed with the government line on Israel and the current administration's policy towards Israel. So let's just get into the first clip here. And guys, by the way, make sure to like and subscribe. It's super good for the algorithm. And my Patreon link and Amazon links are in the description as well. So check that out. Here's the first clip, and we'll talk
Older
about
than
it.
anybody here, of course. None of this conversation matters. None of it's relevant to what's being discussed. People can have their viewpoints on this. The reality is if you come into this conversation pretending that the Trump administration cares about anti-Semitism or is trying to save Jews on campus, it's just a lie. Trump is targeting institutions that he feels doesn't agree with his political viewpoint. He's doing the exact same thing with his numerous executive orders targeted towards lawyers, targeted towards law firms, targeted towards the ex-head of CISA. All of these people are being targeted because they have political disagreements with Donald Trump. That's why Columbia, that's why Harvard are being targeted. He might use the anti-Semitism thing as the reason to do it. But if you think that somebody's violating some part of the Civil Rights Act, if you think that a school is acting in some way that's criminal, then go through the criminal process. This administration has demonstrated time and time again that they completely disregard process, they don't care about rule of law, and that they will do whatever tactics they can to bring people underneath their influence and to try to crush them until they have to go along with whatever the Trump administration likes. Such as, for example, the recent law firms that have now donated over, $400-500 million of pro bono work to take themselves up the crosshair of the administration. Again, like, we can go back and forth all day about, I think it's undeniable that there is a massive undercurrent of anti-Semitism with a lot of the protests at these colleges, but I thought the conservatives said that we should never have hate speech laws, that we shouldn't outlaw hate speech. If people want to protest, if people want to be anti-Semitic, if people want to be anti-Palestinian, if people want to be racist or hateful, you have the right to be that. If you think that an administration is doing this or facilitating this in a way that's violating their obligations under any kind of federal statute, then hold them accountable as such. Don't come out here with these open letters and pretend that you're following some process when it's really just a form of political bullying.
Okay, let's move.
Okay, guys, and I think at the end there, he really makes a good point. For years, conservatives now have basically been saying there shouldn't be any sort of laws against hate speech. No one should be put. You should be able to say what you want on college campuses. If people are talking about against trans people, or if people are talking out against Black Lives Matter, for example, there should be no sort of laws or consequences for people speaking out about this. This has been the conservative line for years, but on this specific issue, it seems like everything has turned. It seems like, no, you need to be deported. If you criticize Israel, you need to be deported. All sorts of protests against Israel, like the encampments, for example, at Columbia University and across the country, and basically they want all of these people deported out of the country, which again kind of goes against everything they've been saying for years. The hypocrisy is honestly sensational. It's beyond belief. And the second clip I'm about to show you guys is basically, the Trump administration has said for a while now that they're basically going to be going after, openly they're saying this is not me coming up with this. This is what the Trump administration has said. They are going to be deporting people who are, quote unquote, against American values. Well, first of all, who decides what that is? Trump himself decides what that is, apparently, which kind of is dangerous in a democracy where the chief person in the executive branch is decide, if you don't agree with me, that's against American values, we're going to go after you. theoretically that's possible that that would happen, and you could just know you know it now. People on social media, all the Trump propagandists would absolutely back him behind that. But Trump himself, he said we're going to be going after people with American values, and the host here basically asked, do you support Trump doing this? Do you think what exactly defines American values? And first of all, it doesn't even matter. In America, you have a First Amendment right to protest whatever the hell you want. The First Amendment is extremely expansive. So the idea that Trump is going to deport people or honestly jail people who are quote unquote against American values seems ridiculous because it is ridiculous. So here's a second clip of Destiny basically calling out Trump saying, you're the threat to American values. Not all of these people here for years they've been saying, oh, this group is a threat to America. This group is a threat to America, existentially. And frankly, none of that's really come to light. Okay. So here's a clip of Destiny, and we'll talk about it after.
That Donald Trump and the wider MAGA movement dislike the views that they deem anti-American or hostile to America. And one of the US government's demands to Harvard include reporting students to the federal government who they believe are hostile to American values. And yet it's unclear from what we've heard from the administration thus far who will determine what a hostile view is, and perhaps equally unclear what exactly American values are. So, Destiny, how do you think we should define American values, but how do you think the government is interpreting them in a political way? And should people with hostile views be reported to the government?
There have been, I'm 36 years old, there have been so many different groups that were supposed to be a threat to what it meant to be an American or a threat to U.S. values. It was, when I was growing up, it was illegal immigrants, it was Mexican invaders. After 9/11, it was supposed to be Muslims and Arabs and Islam. Then it was ISIS. And, people have always identified all of these external enemies, usually non-white, that were supposed to come and destroy this country. When I look at the greatest threat right now to American values in the United States, it is the Trump administration, bar none. Make no mistake, I disagree almost completely with I would call it the pro-Palestinian historical revisionism that goes on their side. But that being said, we have a current administration that doesn't believe in rule of law. There is a process, and you need to follow this process. And I can't think of anything more insane to me than deporting students from the United States of America because you have a viewpoint disagreement with them. From a selfish level, these people come in. Oftentimes, they pay full tuition and they subsidize their own students. These are some of the best and brightest students around the world, despite how crazy their political views may be. And also, as a side note, their political views should be a little bit crazy. They're kids. They're 18 to 22, who wasn't an insane person, who wasn't picking up Ayn Rand or the Communist Manifesto, or, in the past might have been protesting Vietnam or whatever. Like, kids always have radical beliefs. And I think it's worth addressing, where's the external influence on some of these beliefs. I think that's fine to address, but we are throwing away like one of our most important avenues to accessing talent around the world as a result of this administration and the unilateral way that they're going about everything. It's not even done through the entire executive department. It's done from Donald Trump himself. He wills it, he writes it, into an EO, or he has one handed to him, and then he signs it, and then it's carried out. If there are things that you don't like, you have an entire Congress, you have both halves of it with Republican majorities, use them. If you think somebody's breaking the law, use your Department of Justice.
Okay, and I think he makes a really good point at the end there. Guys, if they were committing criminal acts, they would be going after these universities and these students for criminal acts. But the thing is, none of these people have been charged with criminal acts because everything they're doing is within the First Amendment, and they know that. That's the point. They're claiming they're criminals, they're claiming they're terrorist sympathizers, but the truth is, there's no evidence of that, and that's why they can't charge them with anything, which is why they're coming up with this BS that we're just going to be rounding up these people and deporting them for anti-Israeli, anti-American sentiment. That's why they're doing it, because they have no other justification. It's completely insane. And then, of course, he makes up the point, too. Hey, Trump is the threat to American liberty. This is the guy who's totally disregarding a Supreme Court order 9-0 that they have to facilitate the return of somebody in El Salvador they accidentally deported. He's disregarding the judicial branch of the government. That's pretty anti-American. This is literally the first time this has happened in American history. Everything Trump's doing with his executive orders, the targeting of these students, for example, is completely anti-American on its face. Again, America was founded on free speech and freedom and liberty and justice. And now you're going to be deporting these people for exercising that? That's as anti-American as it gets. And the fact that you're going to let the president of the United States decide what's anti-American or what's not, and basically if he decides it's anti-American, he's going to deport you or revoke your funding or maybe go after you, that's completely insane, guys. It's completely insane. I think he has a really good performance here in this debate. But yeah, that's what I got for you guys today. Let me know what you guys think about this in the comment section. Drop a like, drop a subscription as well. Patreon link, Amazon links are in the description also. So check that out. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you later.